Hello, listeners. Welcome back. I am joined by the one and only Jonathan Straight today. We're talking all things business, growth, and creativity. So, Jonathan, let's get started.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. Thank you for asking me.
No worries. So, where shall we start, Jonathan? Because I was thinking back to how we met, and originally it was through Connect Yorkshire, I believe, through the Entrepreneur in Residence. However, prior to that, I had come to, because I was sort of trying to do quite a number of business events, and I love going to hear people talk. And I think you were on a panel once and I heard you talk, and then the entrepreneur bit came after, which is quite interesting. So maybe talk through what your reason was for getting involved maybe with Connect Yorkshire, because there's obviously there's something there about kind of giving back, isn't it, to the kind of next generation.
Well, Connect Yorkshire was Nick Butler, the late wonderful Nick Butler, who came to see me one day, and he said, "Look, I'm going round. I'm talking to business people, and I want a commitment that you'll give 3 days a year to this project." And I thought, great, because giving back is a wonderful thing, and I was already involved in giving money and to an extent giving time, but this seemed like a really good way to help people who were not right at the beginning, but who were on that ascending curve. So I agreed. The panel, I think, was the £1 billion panel, wasn't it? Where the net worth,
it was.
The net worth of the panel was supposed to be £1 billion. I sort of was somewhere to the right of the decimal point. But there were some interesting people on that panel. One year they even gave me Nigel Farage.
Oh, right. Wow.
And without thinking, I introduced him and I said, "To the far right of the panel," and then realised that everybody was laughing hysterically. Oh, yes, Farage, but he was on the far right, so he could make a quick escape if there was any trouble.
Love it. So that, how did you get involved with that then? Was that was separate, was it, to Connect Yorkshire?
Completely separate. That was Jeff Shepherd. And Jeff had a knack of finding people who were interesting. And he'd got sort of resting actors, and he'd got professional interviewers, and he'd also sort of spoken to a lot of entrepreneurs and people in business, building panels about stuff, asking people to speak. And I did a lot of talks at those conferences over the years, not just my story. I did another thing called Biblical Billionaires, which went down really well. And I'm trying to work up something new, because the story's a bit long in the tooth now. People still like to hear it, but I think there needs to be a new bit of research or something interesting to tell people.
So talk me through your business, because obviously you've kind of reached a stage now, haven't you, in your career where you've grown and run a successful business, you've sold it, and now you're kind of in that phase where you can pick and choose and work on a number of different creative projects. So just give me a snapshot to sort of where you're at now and where you sort of started.
So where I'm at now, it's interesting because people say, "What do you do?" And what do you say? Well, you can say I'm a multi-hyphenate or I'm a multi-potentialite, but these are rather horrible things to say. So now I just say I'm a plural person. I do lots of different things. I wear lots of different hats. I help organizations and businesses and people to become the best version of themselves they can possibly be. And I'm advising people like the British Library, a surplus food business called Surplus Group, which runs an online shop called Approved Food. I'm also involved as chair of Waste Aid, which is an international development charity around waste management. I'm also involved in a new bin project because my business was bins and I have a lot of knowledge of bins and some people want that, so it's available. And I've built a photography practice and do lots of other bits and pieces besides. So no 2 days are the same. But generally, I'm helping people. And generally, the theme is sustainability, as well as sort of general business improvement.
So bins, being in a bin business, what does that mean? Talk me through what you mean by that.
Well, these were containers for recycling. So if we pedal back to the late 1980s, I was between jobs. I was looking for something with a benefit beyond earning money for me because I knew I could do that. So I was looking for something with a social benefit, an environmental benefit, a charitable benefit. I wasn't really bothered, but I just wanted there to be some tangible benefit to something or somebody beyond me. And I discovered recycling. I read this paragraph in a green directory. We pay to bury our waste in holes in the ground, and yet the material we pay for has a value, so we pay for it twice. And that was the eureka moment. And I recognized, one, we were not doing a lot of recycling, and two, we needed to. And if I could solve that problem, even in part, I'd be doing an amazing contribution to society and the environment, but I would also probably make some money. So that was the trajectory I set out on. The end result, after doing some consultancy for a couple of companies and some volunteering for an organization, the end result was being on my own, 1993, with a little business with a handful of products and a market that was just getting going. And I knew that as people were separating their waste, they'd need something to put it in and transport it in and dispose of it in. And that really was the hub of what I was trying to do. Specialist containers for waste and recycling.
So is this all targeting sort of commercial businesses, or was it sort of domestic, or a bit of both?
It was neither. It was local authorities.
Oh, okay.
Initially,
yeah.
All of my early customers were local councils. Later on, the waste management companies who had contracts with local councils, and later on still building a retail business, selling compost bins and water butts in partnership with those local councils and water companies as well. Which then morphed into an early e-commerce business. And I went from having a 55-seat call centre to having a 5-seat call centre because I was able to move pretty much all the business online. So I was an early adopter of e-commerce and made quite a success of that.
So was there anything kind of pivotable that you can kind of remember in your, like, were there any like very specific turning points? Maybe it was you came across a massive challenge, and is there anything that sort of stands out? How long was that career?
It was 21 years.
Right.
And it's still going without me. It's part of a much bigger group now, which turns over, I don't know, $500 million or something like that. There are a few points where I would call them quantum leaps, where we did something which made a much bigger difference than the general kind of things you do. So at one point on the journey, I had this huge supplier and I had a huge competitor, and the huge competitor bought the huge supplier. So I knew the writing was on the wall, and I knew that those products that I was selling were not going to be mine to sell for much longer. I needed to do something about this. And I remember a meeting with a fellow called Colin Glass, who you may know, people watching this may know. He's still helping businesses well into his 80s. But Colin came to help me find a way to address this problem. And Colin was talking to me about borrowing money, about venture capital funding, and I really didn't like the sound of any of it. And he said to me after some length of discussion, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I want to list on the stock market. He said, don't be so stupid, you can't do that. And I said, well, you tell me why. And he came up with a raft of excuses, and I had an answer for all of them. And he said, all right, okay, I'll take you to meet some people. So we managed to float the company on AIM in 2003, late 2003. That was a real quantum leap because it propelled us into a league that we weren't in before. It turned us from a small business into a serious business. We had to have a board. We had to have non-executive directors. We had to comply with stuff. It's a whole different mindset. And it put clear blue water between us and our biggest competitor of the time, who we bought 15 months later with another fundraise. So we then became this massive business. So the first quantum leap is listing. The second quantum leap is acquiring our biggest competitor. maybe another quantum leap was moving into a fancy office by the riverside in Leeds, because suddenly we were not in a dump. Suddenly we could invite people to come and see us, and they would take us seriously because we, it looked like we had substance. We were, we had bricks and mortar, though they didn't belong to us. We were paying a fortune in rent. But that impression of solid, trustworthy business was conveyed by having a presentable environment to invite our clients into.
So when you got listed, does that require, to do that, do you have to have investors that invest within the business to do that, to be able to kind of scale and get yourself in that position? How does that work?
Well, they were very specific kinds of investor.
Okay.
They were funds, mainly venture capital funds, because there were tax breaks for them to invest in AIM companies at the time. And you would do a roadshow. But before you did the roadshow, you need a prospectus. And a prospectus is a document that explains who you are, what you're doing, why there's a potential for growth, who the competitors are, what the lie of the land is, and your forecast figures for the next few years. And that document has to be verified word by lawyers before it goes out. So it's a very serious bit of information. And we did that. And then we went to see a number of institutions, mostly, but not all, in London. I think there was one in Leeds, one in Liverpool, one in Henley-on-Thames. They didn't invest, I remember that. And it was such a pain to get to Henley-on-Thames. This was a mid-in of an office that we had to get a very long taxi ride to, and they didn't invest. It was a fund called ISIS that saved us. So there's your soundbite. We were saved by ISIS. They bought 10% of the business. They were very loyal shareholders. And a few other funds came on, and we raised £1.5 million, which was not a lot of money then.
No. So what did you do with that money? Did you sort of increase headcount, and did you look at kind of employing more staff? What?
Well, £250,000 was the cost of doing it.
Okay.
So that was gone straight away. The bankers,
for the lawyers, the
accountants, and the brokers. The brokers took the biggest share. The lawyers and accountants were relatively inexpensive. So what did we do with the money? Well, the money was to create our own product range, so we were not dependent on other people. So some of the money was used for that. Some of the money was used to build our staff. So we took on a marketing manager. We took on a sales manager. We started to build a team because, when I started the business, I did everything myself. Monday was accounts day, Tuesday was marketing day, Wednesday was selling. You've
familiar.
been there, yeah. And then gradually I delegated these tasks as more people were brought into the team. So the team was expanded, and we were in a position then, if we wanted to raise more money for acquisition, which is what ultimately happened.
So I guess in terms of growth then, because obviously we're in a period now where we've sort of, and it's like with any business, it's not, you sort of grow a bit and then you plateau a little bit, don't you? It's not kind of linear where it goes up that nice kind of trajectory. You sort of get up to the next level, then you kind of plod along for a bit and you get up to the next level. What would you sort of say to companies looking to grow? Do you have to be sort of maybe serious and open to investment and kind of, thinking about, letting go of some of your shares and that kind of thing to sort of bring about a cash injection that's going to give you that lift, or, slow and steady, organic? What kind of...
Well, I would always kick back against this because everybody thinks you need money, but actually a lot of ways to grow, you don't need money. What are you going to do with money that you can't do anyway? And if you've got this money, are you going to be reckless? Are you going to be sort of treat it with the respect it deserves, or are you just going to blow it and, oh dear, it didn't work?
Yeah.
So I would sort of look at the ways you can grow without spending money. I mean, in your business, what does money buy you? It's kit and it's people, I suppose.
It's kit, it's people. I guess it's more on sort of maybe investing in more sort of like sales and marketing and that side to acquire more clients, but spread more awareness. I mean, there's obviously so much that we do in-house, but you're limited by the number of people in your team that we're then obviously facilitating work for clients to do the same, right? So there's only so much. So I think investment in my business would probably go into headcount and salaries, people to do the thing, to work on.
But all of those things you can find ways to do them without fully committing. So you could use freelancers, you could hire equipment, you could hire people. Not just to do the selling, but to do the actual work the actual creative work as well. So maybe there's a case to prove the point, and then you say, well, now I know if I do this, it would be cheaper to do it in house, and I will get this return on investment because I've proved it works. And if it doesn't work, you scale back and you don't do it.
Yeah, that's it. I think there's a lot, I follow a lot of Stephen Bartlett stuff, and he talks a lot about experimenting and, trying to, take risks, really, experiment, try different things, some things.
In a controlled manner.
So in a controlled manner.
Putting everything on
That's
wedge.
right.
Everything is controlled. If it goes wrong, you can weather it.
Yeah.
But I would also look at, why are you growing? What's the purpose to grow? Do you want to make more money? Do you just want to do it because you're power mad and you want to dominate something? I mean, I think probably I wanted to dominate the recycling bin business, and I didn't quite get as far as I wanted to, but. I think I read the guy who founded Nike, he would take it very personally if somebody bought a pair of shoes from a competitor. And I felt like that, it was a personal thing. It's an affront to me that you've bought this from someone else. How dare you?
Love it. Yeah, I don't know, actually. It's a good question, isn't it? I think growth for me, I don't know. I feel like there's a lot to learn in growth, because I feel naturally it's you get resistance, right? You get challenges. So there's a lot that can come out of that you can learn. And I think there's something nice about growing a team as well, a team of people. So you grow, a community of people that you work with, and then a wider community of clients. So I think for me, that's the main driver for growth. It's the ability to work with some more interesting people and have a really good team community around that. And also for, just to grow our client base, to work with, different sectors, people that we haven't worked with before, different types of clients, we work with similar industry types, but every single business, even if they are in similar industries, they have all their own people, all their own little nuances. And when you start to kind of work with them in a creative way, you really get involved in a deeper level in their business. And I think there's a lot of interesting things that come out of that you learn. So I think for me, that's the kind of the driver to sort of grow. I mean, what do you think the biggest stumbling block is for businesses with growth and trying to overcome that?
In terms of what you've just told me, is how do you maintain that level of detailed involvement if you've got way more clients?
Yeah.
Because obviously you're doing something very personal and you're putting a lot of yourself into this. How do you keep doing that when you've doubled or trebled or quadrupled the number of people you're dealing with? Or do you need to? Can you teach that DNA
it's a good question,
to somebody
isn't it?
else?
I mean, some of it, I think, is the culture, isn't it, right? So it's a lot about what you bring to the table in terms of who you are, your values, what you stand for, the way in which you work with people, the way in which you lead people or manage a team. And I always kind of feel like, is this a place I would really want to work? Do you know what I mean? If I was an employee, so you're looking at it from that kind of leadership point of view, it's trying to make it like the best place to work in terms of like, we have great clients and amazing projects. We get to do lots of different types of things, fun things. And we have a lot of enjoyment doing that. And then with the people that you work with as well. And I think that's the kind of business, if I was to be employed by someone, that's the kind of company I would want to go and work for. So that's what I try and instill here best I can. How you scale that, yeah, I think that's, it's a great question, and it's probably, a challenge, isn't it? Depending on the type of business you are, because obviously, like large corporates, they're kind of, there's an element of culture, but they acquire more businesses. That kind of gets lost, doesn't it?
Can you transfer the culture?
Yeah,
so we could talk about when we bought our biggest rival, because they were very different culturally to us. I bumped into somebody that worked for me for a few years way back. I met her a few months ago, and she said, I want to tell you that time I worked for you, those few years, were the most enjoyable in my whole career, because we had such fun.
Yeah.
We had a laugh.
Yeah.
Nobody was bothered what we said, and we used to say some pretty horrendous things. There was a lot of bad language around the office. There was a lot of very politically incorrect stuff said, but it was all just banter and fun. It was never serious. And people felt relaxed and chilled and enjoyed it. When we bought this other business, they didn't behave like that. They were, somebody said a rude word.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, they were all scruffy.
Okay.
And we we were smart.
You were smart but swearing, and they were very polite but scruffbags.
We were Barrow boys, I suppose, and I don't know what they were. But eventually we managed to sort of.
How did you merge those two cultures then? How did that work?
Well, we put everybody in a new space. I think that was really the day we saw this sea change. That when we got these fancy offices in the centre of Leeds, day one everybody came in as they were, and day two all the other lot were wearing suits. They'd gone to Asda and bought a suit for 30 quid, but they all got it. They understood that was what you did.
Yeah.
There was a uniform, and they wanted to be part of it.
I mean, obviously you've got a creative flair. What do you think? Do you think having a creative office space, a creative environment to work in is important? Because obviously, more and more companies now, they're, have either scaled back their offices, or there's a lot more hybrid or remote working. I mean, we're quite office centric here still, because I think a lot of the work that we do is about collaboration of a team, and actually just getting together and watching an edit together. There's something about that versus doing it remotely that it's just better. I mean, what's your kind of view on kind of office environments now and having that creative space? Do you think it's important, or?
I think it just needs to be smart and comfortable.
Yeah.
So we always provided tea and coffee for people. We provided them with a nice kitchen space to have their lunch in. They'd always spill sugar all over the counter and not clear it up, but, you take the rough with the smooth. You've got to give someone a decent chair to sit on and a nice desk, make sure that they're not going to injure themselves working. But do they need a pool table or a ball pool or whatever other nonsense? I don't think so.
No.
It was never my thing.
What do you think obviously, because you've grown your business and you've sold it, and now you've got this photography arm. Do you feel like coming away from the kind of more business commercial side has opened up more for the kind of creativity, or do you think it was always there? It was just you were busy in the day-to-day, so it wasn't something you could fully explore?
Well, I would say that creating the business was a work of art. That it in itself, the entirety of the journey was a big work of art. At the detail level, I was more involved with the creative side. So I was closely involved with all the branding and marketing and creative, the literature we did. And it was very innovative, and people have said, well, you took something that was boring and you actually made it very exciting and interesting. And that really was the trick that made the brand. What's the difference between my bin and somebody else's bin? well, I can say in a test it might be a bit stronger, but maybe it's a bit weaker. Who knows?
Yeah.
The real differentiating factor was the brand. And the brand is made of the values and all of the creative that goes behind that. We used to have a slogan, the art of recycling.
Okay.
And we used to, in fact, the office was full of works of art in the manner of Gilbert and George or Roy Lichtenstein, with our products in these screen prints that we had all over the office. And we used those one year for an exhibition, and we thought, oh, this is good. So each year we did another take on the art of recycling. Then we rebranded. We spent a lot of money with propaganda. They did an amazing rebrand. They came up with this strapline for tomorrow's world, which I felt gave us carte blanche to do pretty much anything. We were no longer limited to recycling containers. And one of their campaigns was weapons of mass recycling. It was very edgy, very sort of urban, grungy. And I liked that because you were taking something mundane and elevating it with properties that it didn't have before. And it worked.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? To stand out, you can't just be sort of beige. You've got to take probably risks, and either people kind of love or hate you, really, depending on which way you've gone with that kind of creative. Was there anything specifically, like, what was the sort of smartest spend that you did, say under 10 grand, that kind of gave back something big? Is there anything you can remember?
So we had this retail business, and we were working for lots of different councils, and people would ring to place an order. They clip a coupon to place an order. Let me give you some idea of the scale of this. There were 4 people employed to process these coupons and the checks that came with them. Right. 4 full-time employees just counting checks and counting money. Anyway, people used to ring, and so you'd say, which council are you calling from? This is the offer. And we put these orders on a like a spreadsheet. It was actually a database, but it looked like a spreadsheet. And we'd take their credit card number, and then a student would come in his holidays and key all these numbers into a little terminal to take the payment. It was the most incredibly labour-intensive nonsense. Anyway, one day we got a letter from a company that were offering mail order software. And I had this guy round. He was a genius. And he said he could present us with this system that would firstly identify the local authority from the postcode, so we wouldn't have to ask where they were calling from.
Okay.
Secondly, it would then identify what specific offers there were for them. Yeah. And then it would process the credit card in line before the phone was put down. And it was £10,000.
There you go.
And it changed the business completely.
Wow. So did everyone disappear after that then?
No,
just removed everyone or
we
not?
Still needed the phones. The online stuff came a lot later. Now, the flip side of this is that obviously we loved this company and we felt they were really good and they could work miracles for us. The next piece of software we bought was a lot more money. And at that point, they told us the 10 grand we'd spent should have really been 30 grand. And they lost a lot of money on that project. But nonetheless, they wanted to do a good job. The next piece of software cost about $250,000. And it was never finished. It never worked properly. It was so overcomplicated.
With the same company?
With the same company. I mean, it did the job. But there were so many bugs in it and so many things you wanted to change something. It took forever. So the 10 grand was money well spent. The 250,000, maybe not.
Do you think putting systems and processes into your business is like a key thing? Because you talked about building your business like as a piece of art, and obviously there are all these kind of elements that come together to kind of paint the picture, right? And then there's the detail in each bit. So you almost see sort of systems and processes sort of floating all the way through here. I mean, would you say that that's a key thing? Having, some level of automation or whatever it may be, maybe innovations, but leaning into new tech.
You've really got to put your foot down and make sure you get what you want. So one question I've been asked is, what's the worst decision you ever made? And it's buying Sage Line 50. Most stupid thing I ever did.
Finance.
Because it constrained us and we couldn't do what we were doing before. Now, all right, we had a cumbersome paper-based system, but it worked and it worked beautifully. And it took a lot of years to get to a point with accounting and CRM software to replicate these simple systems that I'd built from paper and basic databases. But obviously, as you're employing more people, you need to have something multiple people can use at the same time, and you've got to buy that in. And it's a tough one. Off the shelf is cheaper. As soon as you start bespoking anything, you've got a liability, not just then, but for the life of the project. Every time the software upgrades, you're going to have to.
Well, you integrate into it, right? Your whole business, or a key component of your business, you sort of committed.
Yes.
Because it's the software, and then it's the function,
and
isn't it?
how many people have been sold SAP for hundreds of thousands of pounds, and it never, ever, ever gets commissioned because the promise of it sounds wonderful, but actually implementing it is beyond their capability.
I think there's a lot of challenges now, certainly I see, where there's so much software now. We're in like the other end of it, because obviously we've now got AI tools, so you can build your own software. I don't know anything about coding. I coded something the other day. I didn't code it. I just got Aurora, my custom GPT, to go and code it, and she made it. I prompted her. So you've got all of this side now, and then obviously tons of companies, tech companies, software, all sort of selling lots of different subscriptions, different models. And it's almost like there's this plethora of choice. And it's like, how do you make the right choice to integrate the right system into your business?
Very tough.
I think that's the kind of current challenge that I see with those sorts of
Try
things.
stuff, let your staff loose on it. But at the end of the day, you know what you're doing, and you know the way you want to do it. And if you have to change that for a piece of software, I think you're going the wrong way. I think you've got to stick to your guns. And if it doesn't do it, find something else that does, or commission someone to write something else that does.
Okay. It feels like there's a bit of like gut feeling there. That's always an interesting thing, the concept of trusting your gut. I've kind of built my business on like gut feeling. What are your views on that? Because I think I read something the other day that was like, and it was kind of querying that side of things. Like,
I think you can become so immersed in what you're doing that you just instinctively know what's right and what's wrong. I remember one of my leadership team said to me once, he says, it's just a strange thing, you're always right. And I said, yeah, of course I'm always right. It's my business. I know it inside out and back to front. But it was an interesting thing he said. If he asked me a question, I always knew what to do. Yeah. And even if I didn't, well, on the balance of probabilities, the choice I'd make would be the better one. Because you are so familiar with it and so immersed in it that you just know, you just get it.
Yeah, I think I've always trusted my gut. There's the odd time when I haven't, and I think that's when I've seen problems arise and things have come out, and I've like thought, I sort of spotted that earlier. There was like that tiny little red flag that's like that, and you're like, is it not? And you're like, just squash it. Maybe I'm just overthinking it. And then it kind of comes back to bite you later. So it is interesting. I think that it is this sort of instinctive stuff I think is quite important.
But the AI thing is also interesting. And AI needs to work for us. We need to still use our brains. Otherwise our brains will stop working. And this is a serious issue. The other thing is, how long are these companies going to be losing billions in order that we can have fun with their products? It's not going to happen forever.
No.
And these products are going to become very, very expensive at just the point we're so hooked on them that we can't manage without them.
Yeah.
So this is a sort of brewing storm that suddenly the 20 quid a month is going to be 500 a month or 1,000 a month.
They've got to get mass buy-in, don't they, to adopt it and then use it. And then, as you say, they become so familiar.
Everybody's using it. I don't know everybody's paying 20 quid a month, but it's...
Well, do you not think they'll keep the cost low?
No.
You think it'll scale?
Well, how many people are there? There's an effective monopoly. There's only sort of 3 companies.
There's only the few, aren't there? A
Yeah.
handful of the kind of major ones.
And
so.
at some point, they'll decide that there's no more investment. They can't lose money anymore. Whoosh! Suddenly, all the prices go up, and everybody is so hooked on this stuff they can't manage without it.
Obviously, there's been quite a big shift, hasn't there, in creativity? I think I saw something today. Don't entirely quote me on it, because I'm like, is all news fake news at the moment? You never know what to trust. But I think Australia today have talked about changing, or they're adopting something to do with the law on, original works and copyright still being retained by the person or the company that's created it, and they're not going to allow AI tools to sort of scrape and use learning from it either, which is quite interesting. I mean, what's your sort of take on AI and the sort of the future of creative? Because I think, we've got a big shift coming, and it will be interesting to see how it sort of plays out in the market. I think the demand will go up, but then I think we'll see a massive influx of what I would class as beige content, because no one's using the brain. It's all AI generated. It has its place, which it absolutely does for certain types of things. It's unbelievable how it can enhance things and bring different things in and add extra layers. But how do we look at protecting uniqueness and creativity and using your brain?
So I do a webinar where I interview writers, and when I've written all my questions, I sometimes ask AI what questions I should ask the author, because I may have missed something, or generally my questions are better, but sometimes there's something interesting. Anyway, I had a pre-publication copy of a book. It wasn't due out for weeks, and yet Gemini or ChatGPT was able to précis the book and detailed questions. This thing hadn't even been published.
It just made it up.
No, it knew the book. It knew it.
But where's it got the information
God only
from?
knows. I mean, obviously, the book existed because I had a pre-publication copy.
So there must have been a pre-publication copy somewhere publicly available.
Not publicly available, but it got it, and it knew. So that I thought was frightening. In terms of what you say about, these models, what they're doing is they're pumping out an average of averages of averages.
Yeah, beige, right?
Beige. So there's a lovely lady called Shika Peter who's written a book called Thinkbait, which I would highly recommend.
Okay.
And she speaks about 50 Shades of Beige.
There you go.
And that's what you get. So everything will look the same, everything will sound the same, language will become dumbed down, nobody will be using interesting words. If nobody's used the word, nobody else will use the word. So we have this blandness. Now, we were talking earlier about standing out. How do you stand out? Yeah. You use a human brain.
Yeah.
A human brain has
nuance, isn't it? It's nuance. I guess AI doesn't fully understand because it doesn't know what it means to be human. It can only assume and replicate from what it sees.
And people will tell you one day it will, but I don't think it will. I don't think we're ever.
Do you think it's going to be able to feel? Well,
how can it?
Feel.
It's a machine. It can't.
We say that, but there's a lot of talk.
It can pretend to feel.
Well, there's a lot of
impression of feeling, but it can't actually feel because it doesn't have what we have.
No, but there's a lot that's to be said where they class AI as a being. So versus a machine, it's like a being because it's autonomous. It can think for itself, it can learn, it can make its own decisions. So can it not? Could it not come with a level of feeling? It's had to learn it somehow, like we've had to learn it from growing up and being around people. It's learning it in a different way. Does that mean it?
Well, I would argue that human beings are not simply machines.
Well, no, we're human.
But that part of the human, maybe that's not the right way to put it. We're not simply animals. Yeah, we have a dimension call it soul, maybe don't call it soul if you don't want to take a spiritual look at it. But there's something about being a human that a machine can never have. And I fervently believe that. So to my mind, whatever these things can do, they're never going to compare or be able to compete with what we are capable of.
I think you'll be able to replicate it, though, at probably an exceptional level. If you think about, like, a robot, this is further down the line, that looks like a human, sounds like a human, replicates, mimics emotion like a human, but it is a robot. I think there's still going to be plenty of people that will probably go for that.
Well, a lot of people are very, very gullible, aren't they?
Versus a human.
So maybe so. Yeah. I mean, it's got to work for us. It's got to be our servant.
Yeah.
There can't be a situation where it's calling the shots. But, you know, it works for me. So Photoshop has brought in a lot of generative AI.
Yeah, it does, yeah.
And I don't do things like change this person's face or put a different background in. But I might say, I don't like these people hovering in the background.
Retouching,
just get rid of them.
Yeah, it's
which
good
would
for that.
take, 10 minutes, and now it takes quite a long time because there's a lot of processing to do, but you don't have to do it. It does it for you.
I remember going on a masterclass course for photography when I sort of started my career, and it was like a 4-day course, and we probably spent about a day on how to learn how to, like, clone and clone certain bits of like a background, or bring in, because you basically have to clone the environment nearby to mask whatever's in the image. And it is just insane now that it is just a sort of a click of a button. It is very clever.
But it's all down to your ability to prompt it. So I a couple of years ago said match the background, and it put wooden sticks with red blobs on the top, which are matches. So you've got to tell it properly. And I suppose that's the skill. And working with a group of students yesterday on a project, they were allowed to use ChatGPT to help. It was an analysis, a comparison of two businesses. They seemed to be struggling to write prompts. They really seemed, that was the barrier to using the AI. You've got to get the prompt right. So really, that's the skill to learn. How do I ask this thing to do what I want, so I'm going to get the best value out of it? So if I don't ask it properly, it's not going to tell me, is it?
Well, you could create a custom GPT prompt engine to prompt your custom GPT.
Yeah.
So you have a prompter.
The prompter to prompt your prompt. It's beiger than beige, that.
It's really beige. So just thought we'd sort of circle back, because obviously you've been helping me, throughout probably the last. We met about 2 months or so ago, and then we said we hadn't met up. Maybe we'd left it maybe a year or two, and then prior to that, it's probably been the last 4 or 5 years, something like that, since COVID. Or pre-COVID.
It was pre-COVID, because we used to meet for lunch, didn't we?
That was it.
Once in a while. I mean, I could probably tell you, given a few minutes, how many times we've actually done this. It's probably half a dozen times or something. I mean, I hope it's been useful for you.
It's always good, I think, to pick people's brains, and I think having like a mentor, having someone that you can talk to and ask questions it's a huge part of your your learning, I think, as whilst you're on your career path. I mean, did you have a mentor throughout your kind of period of business?
No,
you didn't.
I mean, in fact, just talking about what we said about AI and knowing how to prompt, you've also got to know what to ask your mentor.
Yeah.
And I think that's something you're very good at, that when we have met, you've had very specific things you wanted to talk about. And, hopefully you've gone away and acted on what we discussed. But no, I didn't have a mentor. It wasn't a thing.
No.
There was Colin Glass who helped me with the float, but I wouldn't call him a mentor.
Do you think, though, maybe you meet people in business at certain stages, and because mentors suggest that there's a level of like formality and professional relationship to it, but it may be that actually you've had some, even colleagues or friends, like trusted advisors where, you'd hit a challenging spot in the business and they'd be a good sort of sounding board.
I don't think it was really there. And I remember at the point when we listed, which was 10 years in, and I suddenly had a chairman and a couple of non-execs. I think I had 3 non-execs to start with. The feeling of loneliness went away, because it was a very lonely place, and there was nobody I knew who was doing the same thing. People I know went on to do it later.
Yeah.
But at that time, nobody else was doing what I was doing. And it was incredibly lonely. I used to read magazines. That was probably as close as I got to understanding what other people were doing. Read the odd business biography, or it's quite like reading business books. But no, there were no people as such who were helping me.
So you sort of, I guess, so that transition to having a board, because I guess suddenly you've gone from having not really got the accountability to then being held accountable. Do you think that kind of worked for you in reverse, in the sense that, okay, there's a level of accountability, but there's other people here to talk to about what's going on, so you can share some of the problems and the issues, and everyone else is bringing something to the table to kind of...
You have to remember that they all were working for me, even though in the hierarchy of the business, okay, there was a chairman and these non-execs, and they're on a line above. They all work for me, and at the end of the day, it's in my gift that they're there or they're not there. That said, I would never want any of them not to speak their mind. And even now, I find situations with some clients where you're best just to keep quiet, because they don't want to hear what you're going to say. So you say, well, I could help you with this, but I know you too well. I'll keep quiet.
Did anyone ever give you some advice that you either ran with or just ignored, and then it kind of worked out?
I mean, somebody once said, "Look, you've got to look after yourself. You've got to make sure you're all right." And I actually didn't take that advice. I was always focused on the business. The business is first. The business is the most important thing, and consequently, probably my health suffered as a result. Probably my financial well-being suffered as a result, because I was just so focused on the business. And where there were opportunities, maybe I could have taken some money off the table for me. I didn't do it because it wasn't in the interest of the business. Now, was that right or wrong? I think if you're in it for the business. You're really in it for you. So maybe I was right to ignore that advice.
And when you say it's the business, is that about the staff and like people's jobs, or is it sort of the trajectory of where the business is going and the sort of the profits or the innovations? What are the defining features that you're safeguarding or protecting?
Well, the business is a separate legal entity, isn't it? And you've got to think, well, who or what is benefiting from this? So I was never selfish. I wouldn't do things just to benefit me. I wouldn't sort of go off on benders at the expense of the company, because that wasn't the right thing to do, and also sets a bad example. So this entity, with all its staff and its DNA and its all the things it does,
you reinvested in
this animal that I've created. That's the most important thing. That's that's top dog, and I'm subservient to it. That was always my attitude.
Are there any sort of career defining moments, if you could pick one or two, like absolute highlights that you were just like pinch me moments?
Yeah, listing on the stock market. How often does that happen?
Yeah.
All right, there are some people who do it serially, but to have that, to build something and then list it, that really was an amazing thing. And then probably selling. And it's a tough thing to do, to sell a business, because it's your baby, Got to let go. But I'd already let go. I'd let go long ago, because this was a good piece of advice. You can't do everything yourself, and recognizing that allows you to spread your wings and allow the business to spread its wings. So understanding that you're not superhuman. You need other people. You need to give them space to do what they need to do. Is also a good thing. And yeah, that was sound advice. I mean, you know, Gordon Black, my friend, who's sort of been in retail all his life, he says, you know, we made more good decisions than bad decisions.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. You know, you're obviously going to get things wrong. The first thing is, if you get something wrong, you never get it wrong a second time. And you've got to try and get things right more often than you get them wrong. Then you're winning.
And probably not being afraid to make mistakes as well, like going back to experimenting. Because I think sometimes you can make a mistake, and when you're in it, it feels like it's the biggest thing ever, and it's almost like that is the end of the world, or it's gonna, like, that's it type thing. And quite often it's not. It's just, I mean, you've got to navigate
tough times, you know, along this journey. There were moments where we were on a precipice, and my way of dealing with that was to identify precisely what it was and what we needed to do to fix it. And at one point I had a list. There are 4 things. We need to fix these 4 things to move forward. And one by one, I fixed them. But I knew exactly what they were. And that was all I was bothered about. Fix this, fix that, you know, get the lease renegotiated, get this loan guarantee past its expiry date.
Yeah.
Things like this. And one by one they fell off. And then everything's all right again. Till the next crisis.
Yeah. Solving problems.
That's what I did. I spent 21 years firefighting. I think if you say, can you define your career? You know, can you define what this was? It was a 21-year firefight.
But did you enjoy it?
Yeah, of course I did. It was great, and there were moments in it that were just priceless. And everybody who was involved pretty much has that feeling that they were involved in something very special, but also a business that was doing good and pioneering work, saving the world, saving the planet, but having a great time while we were doing it.
I think that's a good summary. Thank you so much for coming in and
Thanks
chatting.
for asking me.
It's been a
joy.
Yeah, it's been great. Just picking your brain, asking
Anytime.
you questions, and
Anytime.
hearing what you got to say. Appreciate it.
Thank you.